Yeah, this is gonna be the greatest experiment for this kid, me being his father. Because yeah, I've spoken to him in no less than 800 voices. Like, this kid is gonna be so annoying. He's gonna be like, "Good night, mate." He's just gonna be like weird because that's what I do to him because he loves it.
Maybe you're like cultivating the next Robin Williams.
Yes.
That'd be amazing. What a gift to the world.
Or Ted Bundy. You know, it's really up in the air.
It's a toss-up. Fine line between the two.
He's gonna be good looking. Let's do it. Welcome to Pop-O-Holics, the show about hot takes and the not tasty pancakes. Where are we doing this dinosaur thing again? That's insane. There isn't no way you're getting me on that plane. But I will get on that plane, and the movie will happen. Welcome to Pop-O-Holics, the show that you know. I'm your host, Christian, and I'm joined as always by my two favorite dino people.
Alan. Chris Conkling here.
The Raptors speak. It's Brian Dupree.
I hate how they ruined this movie in the opening crawl. It's really...
Yeah.
Honestly, they gave away so much exposition of the plot. It was...
We'll talk about reduxing lots of like plot points, notwithstanding people being surprised at what Raptors can do. Be like, he did a math problem.
My God, they have a chalkboard.
That is in reference to what we're going to be talking about today. It is Jurassic June. What I could always assume is going to be a gem of a blockbuster movie, Jurassic World Dominion, a film in which I am making sure I see in 4DX for its quality. We are covering all of the Jurassic Park movies, except for the first one, because we did a commentary, which you can check out. But yeah, this is Pop-O-Holics. We also have a weekly upload if you want like updates on pop culture, like a weekly bite into the news and what we've been consuming. And we cover video games and TV shows and all that. Please check that out. But on today's episode, we continue our journey down the Jurassic sequels and wrap up the original trilogy with Jurassic Park 3, 2001. This is the last of its dying breed. Okay. This is a movie released before September 11th. Jurassic Park 3.
Oh, I thought you were playing the trailer.
I have a proposition I'd like to discuss with you. I've chartered an airplane to fly us over Isla Sorna, and we'd like you to be our guide. We'd love to make a contribution to your research here.
It could almost be paradise.
My God, I'd forgotten.
We have a landing strip up
You
ahead.
cannot land on this island.
Oh my God!
But in this forbidden place, where man has tampered with nature,
This is how you make dinosaurs?
This is how you play God.
something unexpected has evolved.
They can talk to each other.
To a degree we never imagined.
On July 18th,
You probably won't get off this island alive.
it's not just a walk in the park.
They set a trap. They actually set a trap.
That is from the trailer of Jurassic Park 3, directed by Joe Johnston, longtime collaborator with Steven Spielberg. I believe he AD'd or did visual effects supervision for him. Written by Peter, it's not Buchman, Peter Buchman. That's it. Alexander Payne and Jim Taylor. Cinematography by Shelly Johnson. Score by Don Davis. It had a budget of $93 million. It grossed a $368.8 million metric butt ton certified good ROI. And it stars Sam Neill, William H. Macy, Tia Leoni, Alessandro Nivola, Trevor Morgan, Michael Jeter, and John Diehl. And what are we going to be talking about? Well, our overall thoughts revisiting this Jurassic Park sequel, the ending to the original trilogy, as we said. Kind of our thoughts watching it as old adults. I think some of our opinions might surprise you. Then we'll go into spoilers, so don't worry if you haven't seen the film and you're like, I never saw those films, but I'm interested to see what these random dudes have to say about it. Don't worry, we're not going to spoil it till later. We'll jump into spoilers, talk about our favorite moments, standout elements, and have some closing thoughts. as we prepare for our next episode, which is going to be Jurassic World, which is very exciting. It's going to be very fun. But this episode is going to be possibly even more fun. I don't know. You'll have to listen to find out. Revisiting this, Chris, we're all fans of Jurassic Park here. I can't claim that you're we were like lockstep. We all love this movie.
We all love, this franchise.
We all love this franchise.
To varying degrees.
To varying degrees.
Brian's like, I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Oh, no.
These movies are bad.
No. I'm going to say it right now. I like this movie, and I like it a lot. Okay? That's my thoughts right there. But Chris, before I dive into more thoughts, I'm going to stop talking and let you go. What was your thoughts revisiting Jurassic Park 3?
Christian, as I mentioned last week, and as you just mentioned, I unabashedly find this franchise to be endlessly entertaining.
Be bashed. I encourage you. Bashedly love it.
I can watch any of these films on any given day and be entertained. But that doesn't mean that they're all quality films. As we've mentioned, the quality of this franchise has degraded since the first one has come out, and it's been progressively worse and worse, which is great for Jurassic Park 3 because it doesn't make it the best Jurassic Park movie, but it also doesn't make it the worst Jurassic Park movie. It
might be the third best.
It's the third best. It's the third best Jurassic Park movie out of potentially 6. So that's not a bad place to be seated.
I mean, we're going to have another September 11th.
I say potentially 6 because we haven't seen the 6th one yet, and I don't know what the quality of that movie is going to be.
Sure.
But, oh, man. Okay, so, as you mentioned, Joe Johnston's taking over directorial duties in this film. Joe Johnston, on his own, great director of Rocketeer. He directed the Captain America: The First Avenger. Like he's made some great movies. He's worked on Star Wars films. As you said, he's been a collaborator with Steven Spielberg for a very long time. So he's a very creative man. He was given the impossible task of making this third film that was in development for a really long time. In fact, when they started shooting this movie, the script wasn't finished.
You don't say.
So everybody, all the actors, I will say, I think they're doing a phenomenal job for what they are given.
William H. Macy's in this movie, for God's sake.
He's great.
He is.
William H. Macy's great.
Diehl
Leoni
God.
is great as well. Like I said, I think everyone's doing fantastic for the job that they were paid to do. However, Alessandro Nivola has gone on record in saying that this is the only job he's ever worked on where there was literally nothing he could find to grab onto for Billy Brennan in the film. Which is, to be perfectly honest,
he suffered. Well, I'm not going to.
We're not going to spoil it yet. But to be perfectly honest, I honestly think, like, even having said that, Billy's a fun character to watch. You know, like, this movie is an entertaining film.
He gets roasted savagely at one point.
Yes.
He gets a talking. He gets a stern talking to.
Real stern Alan talking to.
How does this movie differ from the first two Jurassic Park movies? And I think the biggest difference that I found on my rewatch is that both Jurassic Park and The Lost World have thematic messages that they're trying to illustrate. Whether it is, corporate greed or playing God or environmental preservation, like those movies are trying to say something through the lens of science fiction. And this movie is kind of devoid of thematic messaging, as I texted you guys after my rewatch. However, ironically, being the first Jurassic Park movie not directed by Steven Spielberg, it actually has one of the most Spielbergian plots. It's about a broken family, which is something that Spielberg tackles all the time. And Spielberg was an executive producer on the film, so he was on set a lot, kind of like helping Joe Johnston and stuff. So it's not like a complete divergence from those first two films, but it's definitely not as good. I also think the two strongest sequences in this movie are the ones that they have adapted from the book. That original novel is getting a whole lot of stretching over the course of these first two films. And there are a couple of scenes that they cut out from the novel they didn't use in the first two films that they ended up utilizing the idea of those scenes in this movie. And I'll go into that in more detail in spoilers. But those two sequences ironically end up being my two favorite sequences in the whole film. I don't know if that's directly because they are pulled from the original novel, but I think they're the strongest sequences. So yeah, it's a mixed bag. Like I said, not the best, not the worst. Entertaining. I've seen this movie probably 5 to 6 times over the course of my life, and I always enjoy elements of it. It's fun to see realistic dinosaurs on screen. What can I say?
Isn't it? I'm gonna fight back that there's not something going on with theme. Although I don't think you're wrong in saying that there's less going on.
There's a narrative, and it's coherent, but I don't know if it's
You betcha.
as good as the first two.
Sure.
What more could you ask for from a film having a coherent plot?
I mean, I think it's important. I think it's an important thing.
Bare bones.
I think it's an important thing that Dr. Grant doesn't try to train the raptors to fight with
I think
him
that's
on
also very
motorcycles.
important. That's also incredibly important.
I think that's a pretty good idea.
And why this is the third best Jurassic Park movie.
Brian, your thoughts?
So, I'm a man who loves a good pun. And this movie starts with an incredible parasailing pun that I'm not going to spoil, but it's incredible. But it also
Really sets the tone for how you're going to enjoy this film.
Yes, and it simultaneously, though, shows immediately how much special effects and CG are going to be leaned on much more significantly than the previous two movies. And that was kind of a consistent theme throughout the course of this one for me. I thought they didn't do nearly the level of practical stuff, to my eye, that they did in previous ones. And it really made it so the set pieces didn't land as much for me. It was almost kind of silly at times for me. I think the performances are good. I don't think the writing's incredible, and a lot of the characters are just stupid, like to varying degrees, unfortunately. So they're kind of flat. But I think the performances are as good as the writing allows. And Smug Allen, I don't think he delivers the lines like Goldblum can.
Smiling?
Yeah, I don't know. Him just like smiling and saying no one's making it off this island alive is just like, wow, that is he is a jaded man, and it's just not as fun.
If you had been attacked by dinosaurs in a theme park prior to this, wouldn't you be a little jaded as well?
Oh, I definitely would.
Shouldn't have.
The man was kidnapped under false pretenses, and he also is not getting paid. So I'd be pretty jaded too.
It's a little bit of a spoiler, Chris. We're in non-spoiler sections for this 20-year-old movie.
I apologize.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. I something that I do like, the kind of him being lured for money purposes because his research is the funding is running out for his research, and the continuation, and something that I'm actually interested going back through these movies. I do conceptually like leaning into the raptors as the kind of main dinosaur character of the series. You get your T-Rex stuff and new dinos that are introduced here.
You'll regret that statement by next week, Brian. But continue. I agree that they're working in this film, and I like them in this film.
I think ultimately, it made me hopeful that elements of Dominion could potentially work. I'm
shaking my head.
Maybe I'm delusional here.
You are. Dominion's going to be a garbage dumpster fire. I'm calling it, and I don't think I'm going to regret. I'm not going to eat my words. But Brian, I appreciate your optimism.
I will say this: I have seen some practical effects being used in Dominion.
Okay.
So
it's good.
Maybe there's hope.
That would be
We'll see.
That would be nice. That would be refreshing for sure. For me in this movie, I think there's one standout set piece that really worked for me, and there's a couple moments from others that I enjoyed, but that one's pretty much right at the end of the movie. So yeah, I think there's also a kind of a gag that's more silly than it is a good set piece that we'll get into in favorite moments that always stands out and I really enjoy. But yeah, it seems like a decent step down from even Lost World for me watching it this time. But with still a handful of moments that I enjoyed, and it would not be the one that I would come back to first of these movies, but I could maybe see myself watching it again if I'm in a Jurassic Park mood.
In a Jurassic mood? Who isn't in a Jurassic mood from time to time? I ask you, non-ironically. I think I like this movie more than number 2. Coming back as an older adult.
Oh, wow.
I actually
Impressive.
think this film is more itself and consistent than number 2. Number 2 is thematically, I think, trying to say more, but I think it fails ultimately because that third act is meandering. And I like that second film, but I think that it remixes so much of the original from a set piece standpoint that it feels less original than this movie. And I will put a disclaimer: Jurassic Park is a cinematic tour de force masterpiece, affected cinema for ages. It's untouchable among all the sequels we're going to talk about. But 3 isn't that, but it is an insanely good B monster movie. Like, it's the best B. If you look at it through the lens,
I will agree with that.
Of not a Jurassic Park movie, it is a A+ B monster movie. Which is weird, too many letters going on there. But I really do think, like, the plot is straightforward.
JP3 is an A+ B monster movie
with a C cinema score. I really do. I actually like the effects. I think the practical mix with the CG is really interesting and does more than I think most movies do. I already skipped ahead and watched Jurassic World, and I gotta say that the effects here are more convincing for me in so many parts of it. There are obviously standout compositing issues that just look bad from 4K upscaling. Like, that's just what I watch these movies on 4K. I watch, if you watch this thing in high def, like, these films are rendered at, like, the CG was rendered. This isn't a favorite. They did not go back and retexturize this. So texture-wise, it's not great. But they're also doing bolder things with putting them in natural lighting, making it much brighter than Spielberg ever did. Immersing some of these animatronics in water, completely surrounded by rain and stuff and fire. And so they're doing a lot of really bold stuff mechanically from a CG and from an effects all-around perspective. And I do think that, like, the movie just moves. Like, it has a good pace. I don't think I was never bored. Like, it's exciting. I think it's really quick. Like, how long is this movie? I didn't double-check this. But
I think it's the shortest of all.
Yeah, I think it's like 90 minutes.
Which
it does move for sure.
Yeah, it moves. And I think there are so many cool set pieces. There's so many great homages to Spielberg that I actually never caught until this latest rewatch. And I love all the set pieces. I really do. I think there's something cool in each of them from just like a horror monster movie. It's not as heady as Jurassic Park, certainly not. But I think they're kind of remixing a lot of those ideas. I do think there is a dynamic that the writers tried to get down, and I think works after me being older and giving the film a little room to work with, like, admittedly.
I will say compared to the drafts of this script prior to what they shot, this is the best possible outcome for what they were working on, because some of the earlier drafts of this script seemed so horrifically messy.
Yeah.
So I'm glad they actually threw out the entire script, I believe, like 2 days prior to rolling principal photography and rewrote it. So I'm grateful that they did that.
Yeah, and it has sort of an anticlimactic ending, and it kind of has a really shitty beginning. And that's never a way to book a movie. Like, I will admit that, like, the worst scenes are the last, like, 3 minutes and the first 3 minutes, which sucks. Like, that that opens with a sour taste. It has to build back up momentum, and then it kind of leaves with a kind of really silly ending. So not like that ending proper, but like the like very, I don't know. I'll describe it in spoilers, but I do think that, like, colors the view of it, and obviously it having to measure up to Jurassic Park is not good, but I'll take this over any of the sequel movies in a heartbeat. I do think I actually like it as a viewing experience more than Jurassic Park: The Lost World. From a pure cinematic thing, I think it's the most. I think this movie, as of now, is the most different movie from Jurassic Park. It feels like it's trying to do something different.
Just listen to that trailer. That trailer is so drastically different from the first two trailers.
Yeah, it really
very early 2000s.
And it's interesting because the original Jurassic Park is an adventure kind of / horror movie, right? And this film it does have adventure, but it's more horror. I think it's more. I don't know. It's more the Tyrannosaurus Rex scene throughout all the scenes. Like it has this dread that's happening, and characters are in peril way quicker, and there's a lot more.
I will say I don't know if this is the same gimmick that Brian was mentioning, but there is a gimmick that they utilize from like the get-go that does help build tension in certain sequences.
But it also, I think there's, Christian, I agree with your point that it's significant. It's much more different than The Lost World, or than Jurassic Park compared to The Lost World. And I think there's a different kind of silliness here. And I don't want to get too much into specifics, but the way the dinosaurs are acting in this movie, they've progressed a step, which I think for my taste, they leaned on the CG a little much, but in terms of what they're doing and how they're fighting and stuff, there is a level of like, oh wow, they just did that. Like there's a ruthlessness that's there. But I think there's kind of an underlying silliness that maybe I don't know, maybe that isn't there and I'm just putting onto it, but that kind of takes me out of the seriousness of the horror elements.
Alerting to the fact that I think in multiple scenes, dinosaurs just kind of present themselves. You know what I mean?
I'm here now.
I'm here.
This is it. Yeah. Wait
there's
to be
dinosaurs
seen
that like
before reacting.
Yeah,
like
walk onto the set.
I think
smoking a cigarette. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
What we're tapping into here is that in the first two Jurassic Park movies, all the dinosaurs, they were meticulous in making these monsters feel as though they were real animals. In Jurassic Park 3, there are moments where dinosaurs act in ways that aren't animalistic.
Right.
And they seem more like sentient monsters.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I'm okay with them leaning more into the monsters. As I've mentioned before in the books, they're supposed to be monsters. But like when you're losing that animal side to how these dinosaurs are functioning, there is a silliness involved with it. It's almost like breaking. It's like an uncanny valley type of thing almost, where like
exactly.
They no longer feel like they are real within the world because they're not acting in the way that animals would act.
Yeah.
So I wholeheartedly understand what Brian is trying to say.
And I will agree with that. And that is why this is a very different movie. It has so much less wonder. Like Jurassic Park, part of it is the wonder that it builds up, which leads into the tragedy of the horror and all that other stuff. And that's why that's a masterpiece. And that's why this is a fun B-monster movie. But I think it is the most fun and most different and not challenging is not the word. But I do think we're going for something different here. And I appreciate that. And I do think I love the design of the raptors in this. I think it's my favorite raptor design. Hands down. New movie, old movie. I think they look they added quills to the top of them. I think it's so cool.
I think it's my least favorite, to be honest.
No, I love. Oh,
that's just personal preference.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Well, we'll talk about it spoilers, but yeah, it's definitely going to be in like my standout moments. Is like I appreciate it. It counter to the point we just made. It feels the most. It feels like a step in the right direction of making them more like animals visually. You know, and I think the raptors behave similarly throughout all the films. So. Except for the one where they become commandos. That's ridiculous, and we'll talk about that next week.
Oh, the next one.
Yeah. When they become just like straight up like, bro, what's up? Am I cool with you? Or am I cool with the other bro?
Oh, boy.
Bro, I don't know how I feel. You know what, bro? We cool, bro. Not that the Raptors doing that. That's a little bit ludicrous. This one, I think the Raptors come across as the most personality, as one would expect. But yeah, anything else before we go into spoilers?
I do want to mention you were talking about like production quality and stuff like that. Rewatching this movie, I have to say I was taken out of multiple scenes. And look, I respect the craft of building set pieces. They did astonishing things to recreate a jungle for this movie. But it just seemed to me more so than the first two. There's so many scenes where you can clearly tell they're on a stage instead of shooting on location.
100%.
The plants just don't look, despite all the hard work and the effort that they put in. I don't want to discredit that by any means. It just doesn't feel as real to me as the first two when they went out on location to shoot things. It very clearly feels like a stage, similar to the problem I had with the backyard in the Adam Project. You just can tell when plant life isn't real.
That's interesting because there's shots where I'm like, where is this in the world? I never did that. Like, what a beautiful place that I want to go see. But it's weird. It didn't rip me out as much. But I definitely see your point. It's definitely valid. That is never something I even like really thought. I mean, I guess I went, oh, it's a stage, but I also know that like it's not really Hawaii or it's not really Costa Rica. So
Right.
It's Hawaii.
There's a level of that.
And they did shoot some of it on location. Just I think because of the deadline, because Joe Johnston in the special features said when they kicked off principal photography, there was already a release date, so they had to make that release date, and that's just it's an incredible hindrance to the creative process when a studio is like, it will come out on this date.
Yeah,
like I don't care what you have to do to finish the movie. It becomes less about the quality of the film and more about making the date. And that's never a good environment to work in. So,
yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to spoilers for Jurassic Park 3. So I actually want to start out and talk about the first point you made about the themes and how there isn't themes in this. And I actually gravitated towards the idea that there's this divorced family that like lies to get Alan Grant onto the island. And you have sort of a familial breakage between Alan Grant and what's his name? Buddy?
Billy.
Billy. I love this movie.
As much as you love Rogue One, right?
Yeah, where there's this familiar dynamic, and it kind of, despite, again, Brian, I think you make valid points that the film isn't all working in conjunction to this idea. There is a monster element to these dinosaurs that feels less like animals. But I think the raptor side is working from, because they're hunters, and they act like hunters, they're very intelligent, all this stuff that they play up throughout all the movies, kind of remixed ideas they have there. This idea that in order to like finally get out of it, they actually have to reunite the raptors with the family, and that's not a lot. There's not a lot there. There's not a lot of meat to chew on with that bone. This idea of Billy is actually breaking up this animal's love and affection for their family, as things have broken up the Kirbys and their relationship, and the relationship between Grant and him are strained. And I can see where they're going with that idea. Again, it's followed up with a ridiculous scene where an entire Navy shows up at the very end, and it feels very strange. It's very stupid, very, very, very stupid. But that final scene with the raptors and them giving the eggs back and making it out, again, comparing to Jurassic World, which we'll get into, like the interaction between the raptors was much more tense. It felt much more real. I appreciate it from a special effects point of view. The fact that they're and I'll talk about this a lot, they're blending a CG raptor coming in next to a animatronic head, and because both of those are happening, it makes the CG look better, and that's just a tactic that I think can help save movie budgets, but also add to the realism and help distract from some of the bad CG. Because honestly, unless it was a standalone dinosaur that was in CG, I really loved when they mixed the effects, and I'll get into that a little more with standout moments. But I do think, like, from a thematic point, there is something there that isn't super obvious, that isn't super well constructed, but it is there, and it is different. And pacing wise, I do appreciate this as a unique film among the series.
And I will say, I agree with all those points. And maybe it's unfair. It was unfair of me, and maybe a little bit of hyperbole, to say that it's thematically devoid, because it's not. Like I said, this is the most Spielbergian story we get from any of the first three Jurassic Park movies, because he loves writing about broken families, So I think you're dead on. It's just not as, like, when I watch science fiction, and it doesn't all have to be this way, but like it's not as much of a macro theme.
Oh, of course.
As the first two films are. We're definitely kind of zoning in on a more personal, more micro family oriented theme. And I think in juxtaposition to the first two films, it feels lesser because of that. But I also want to make the disclaimer that, and we mentioned this last week when we talked about The Lost World, I like that movie so much that when I think about that movie, I tend to cut the third act from the film in my brain. So I can absolutely see where you're coming from. The Lost World is also by no means a perfect film. And I think you're right. In terms of the entirety of the footage that was shot for Jurassic Park 3, it is fair to say that this is a more coherent, well put together movie than The Lost World, even though I might not like saying that solely because of that third act.
Yeah.
That third act really does stand out way too much. But in my head, it doesn't exist. So
Headcanon is important.
Yeah. Brian, do you have anything to say about that?
No, I think Christian, you expressed that really well. I think that is like probably the strongest thematic stuff that's happening there. That was great. And Chris, you similarly expressed what I was trying to say earlier. So I think you guys have said it there.
All right, so let's go through standout moments. Brian, let's start with you. What are some of your standout moments of this film, working or otherwise?
Okay, so just like great kind of sci-fi that feels even like definitely more prescient now than it did for me then. The 3D printed structure of the Velociraptors, like vocals.
Yeah.
Super cool.
What a cool
When I saw
idea.
the 3D printer, I was like, oh, these are more commonplace now. Like in 2001, when I saw this in
nuts.
theaters, I was like, what the hell is that? That's awesome. It's very weird to look back on it.
And a cool, like, obviously it's derivative of the sound design of the Raptors from the great work that that was done on the first Jurassic Park. But the sound they get is awesome. It sounds like wind going through like a windpipe.
Right.
It's very chilling. As soon as he blows through it, you're like, oh, I know what that. And it sounds. They were able to make it sound somehow more real, which is weird because they were trying to make it sound real with real dinosaurs. But that had like a chilling, like, oh yeah, like the scary things that you can do with science and stuff. So yeah, I think it's a good like sprinkle of terror of what we've previously experienced. I think it's cool.
Sam Neill in this moment is also doing a fantastic job because he's simultaneously terrified and impressed when he hears that sound. I can only imagine he hasn't heard it in years. And I'm sure he's getting terrifying flashbacks from what he went through just from hearing. Yeah. So he's doing a great job in this moment, acting and conveying both of those things. Like he's incredibly impressed with the technology and excited about the discovery, but he's also like terrified of hearing that noise.
Also, that set was built in like 2 days. There's a commentary track. I did watch a commentary track for Jurassic Park 3 on the DVD, and it's the special effects people and the effects supervisor, and they had mentioned like, we did a really good job for having 2 days to figure that out.
Everything about this movie was rushed.
Yeah, no, that was like a last minute change to the script that they had to come up with. So all the bones all that stuff was made so quick, which is, I think, really impressive because I wouldn't have thought. I think it looks great. You know, it sounded like they wish they had more time based on the commentary track.
I'm sorry, Brian, we interrupted you.
Oh, no. That was fine. No, yeah, that was one moment. Do we want to pass it around?
We'll pass it around. Chris, stand up moment.
So earlier I mentioned that there are 2 sequences ripped directly from the first Jurassic Park book, Michael Crichton's book. And this first sequence that I'm going to mention, surprisingly, is one of my favorite sequences in all of the Jurassic Park movies. And that is the aviary sequence. In the book, Dr. Grant and the kids have to go through the aviary as they are going down like the river ride, which again is a portion of the novel that is utilized later in this film that they haven't used prior to this. But it's so cool to see these pterodons on the screen. You know, Billy having to do the parasailing to like navigate through them and save Eric. I love everything about this sequence. The tension that's built while they're crossing the bridge and the pterodon kind of like coming through the smoke. It's all really working for me.
And it looks, I think it's that through the smoke, that CGI, they wanted to do it practical. They had man in suits.
But they couldn't do it.
They couldn't.
It was too heavy for somebody to wear.
They couldn't pull it off. But because it's dark, that's like some of the best. That pterodon coming through the smoke is some of the best CGI because it's darker.
They're also utilizing, real animatronics in terms of the pterodon babies. Yeah. So again, it's this blending of using practical effects with CGI that just makes everything seem more seamless and realistic, as you were mentioning earlier, Christian. But yeah, this whole sequence is a whole lot of fun.
It is. You get the beginning where they're walking on the rail. It's moody. This is the one part where the movie really slows down to a crawl to like build this tension. Like it's just a well executed scene from a tension perspective, and we get a Spielberg shot. I don't know if you noticed this, Chris. You know what I'm talking about? Do you know the Spielberg shot I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
I think it's Billy, or as I call him, Buddy, runs to the end of the catwalk and stops, and then the opening is revealed that there's a gap in the catwalk, and it does the where you're zooming the camera in as you go forward on the dolly. And I was like, oh, it's a fucking ode to Spielberg right there. It's the Jaws shot of him on the beach, right?
I love it. Okay. Yep, I love it. Yeah, but having Grant also like look at the poop on the railing and then pick it up. I'm always going to remember that moment where he's like, it's a bird cage. Seeing that in theaters, how old was I when this movie came out? I was probably... 13, 14. Yeah, I was like an early teen at this point, but I just remember being like, this is the Jurassic Park I came to see. Like, super excited for this sequence. I also think it might be one of the stronger scenes because Michael Crichton wrote a variation of this scene in the original book.
And this was going to be similar to the ending of Jurassic Park 2, of Jurassic Park: The Lost World.
Do you mind if I give like a quick nerdy nitpick
that's
while we're
why
talking
people
about
come
this?
To the show.
I think placing this movie on Isla Sorna was a horrible mistake. It doesn't look anything like the island from The Lost World. I think if instead they had put it on the backside of Isla Nublar from the first movie, all of the set decoration with the fences and the aviary and everything would have made way more sense.
It's an interesting decision.
That's just like a nerdy nitpick I have. I know we go back to Isla Nublar in Jurassic World. I think it also would have functioned much better because like there's an aviary on that park, so it's like, oh, we already have these structures kind of pre-constructed. We just need to make them better and bigger, So that's just one element of the script that like never really worked for me, is that they're going back to the opposite side of Isla Sorna. And I know that's a stupid nitpick.
Yeah, I mean, we do see that there's engine facilities for breeding and all this other stuff. But yeah, the cages and the aviary.
You wouldn't have that stuff, really.
I mean, you imagine there would be. I mean, they still have to contain them. But there's a point made in Jurassic Park: The Lost World where he's just like, free and open. Dinosaurs roaming free. And you're like, why are all these cages everywhere? So, yeah, I agree. Very cool.
I just wanted to say on that point, because that set piece had one of my favorite moments as well, when Billy is like sacrificing himself and somehow survives.
Buddy.
The notorious Buddy. We get a shot of, did you say it was a pterodon?
Yeah.
The pterodon just looks
Not
back.
to be confused with a pterodactyl, which is a different dinosaur.
That's what I would have said.
From
honestly.
the same genius.
So when you get the pterodon just looking back at us, and it's clearly a practical one, while the other two are like pecking the hell out of Billy in the background, that is just like a classic kind of like horror movie moment, and that built from the scene on the overpass, on the walkway with the fog and everything, just like the shape there. Really well done, I thought.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a great standout scene. I think it's one of the best in the film. I'm going to defend, some goofy stuff going on. I'm not going to lie. So I'm ready to take the heat.
Yes.
I love the plane scene. I love the plane scene.
Technically, I mean, they had to do so much to make it work.
There is miniatures, CGI, animatronics, And then they're putting that all together in one scene. I mean, that's literally, and if you listen to the special effects commentary, they talk about this. It's never been, all these elements have never been put together like this in a film before. And it works to varying degrees. I think in the opening scene, one of the standout worst scenes in the entire film, in the entire series, I'll say. It is so horrifically bad because they're doing so much compositing and blue screen and all this stuff before. I think it's really, the technology is ready for prime time. They didn't have enough time to really render out what they wanted. All that stuff being said, this plane scene, I think overall does work and is kind of, it's interesting because it does the thing that you don't expect, and I think it blows its load a little too quick thematically in conjunction with the whole film, because it just sorry, you guys don't like splurge. Because they kill off so many characters, they kill off like 2 characters right away but you don't expect it. So there's a given.
Both of the assassins, the hired mercenaries,
die. The
with,
most deadly people, they immediately die, which I think is great. Like conceptually, I can see why they're doing it that way. But I just love it. You get the shot of them landing. They hear it and they're like, "That's a T-Rex." Buddy's like, "That's a T."
Budley. We've decided on Budley. Combining both names.
Billy goes, "That Tyrannosaurus Rex," and it zooms in so perfectly. I love the camera movement in this movie. I think it's A+. Definitely like son of Spielberg, who zooms into Allie. He's like, "No, it's much bigger," and you're like, "What the fuck could be bigger than a fucking T-Rex, dude?" And so they all jump in the plane. There's the sequence, and then the guy comes in. And he's like, "Turn back," and the blood goes all, and you're automatically like, "Well, this is a lot gorier." And it crashes through and rolls around, and you get a mix of the practical and CG Spinosaurus aegypticus, which is like the coolest name for a dinosaur, like hands down. Don't fight me on that. Spinosaurus aegypticus. That's not a real dinosaur. And he just tears shit up, and it's terrifying. Like automatically, we're like, oh my god, we're automatically like this movie just started 30 minutes ago, and we're already in like T-Rex level threat. So I think establishing that very quickly of like, these are monsters and they're coming to kill. And there's a lot of cool stuff where like the foot of the dinosaur crushes the thing, and that's CG, but then the head comes down and that's practical. They blended those things so coolly. Like, I think that's all very awesome, how they do that. I do think, to me, that's the way to do it. Like, I don't know. There is something very special about it. You see they had hydraulics in the jet that are crushing. It's rolling around. There's some of the stuff where they're using the sped up stop motion miniature stuff that looks a little strange, but I don't know. All in all, compositing all that stuff together, I think it's a very effective.
It's technically impressive. Yeah, I'll give it that.
What do you guys think of this scene?
God, it's so. Like I said, I don't want to discredit any of the craftsmanship that's going into this film, because they really are trying their best. They're making leaps and bounds forward in terms of special effects for this movie, but the Spinosaurus just doesn't work for me in this sequence. It looks way too fake, and like you said earlier in last week's episode, Christian, and you mentioned earlier in this episode, these special effects and CGI are functioning at their best at night or in the rain. And because we are in like a dimly lit forest, but you can just tell that the Spinosaurus is not real during this sequence, at least when they're using the practical effect. And it just, I don't know, it's kind of the first moment where the movie starts to fall apart for me, to be perfectly honest. But I, like I said, I don't want to discredit all the hard work that the people put into this movie.
I think it's interesting because clearly, I mean, I imagine this budget's similar to what Spielberg had, but, you know, dollars are fading quickly. We're on the precipice of a housing crisis 8 years later. So who knows? But it does seem like, if there's, you know, an obvious critique, it seems like the Spinosaurus has less points of articulation compared to what they were doing in Jurassic Park, especially The Lost World, where there's really just the mouth and the eyes and maybe some eyelid stuff, and it doesn't seem like there's as many things. It looks like it might have been a rush thing. But
I prefer the final sequence with the Spinosaurus to this one.
It finally looks great there for me as well.
Yeah.
I feel
but because it's in the rain and in the dark.
Which is why I kind of put this one above it, because it feels like an to me,
they're trying to do something different, and they're doing the best that they can to make it work.
Yeah, and I do think parts of it look good. I had mentioned that the Spinosaurus's teeth look particularly very yellow. He has not been brushing his teeth very much. But I don't think it all looks. I'll take bad looking practical over bad looking CG, and I think that's where I fall on it. Which is like, I still go like, that guy is still in a thing's mouth, which doesn't rip me out as much as super CG thing happening with CG character, and like where I'm like, oh, it's all like, this is like,
when that's happening though, my brain, and we're students of film, so like not everybody's going to think this way, but when he's in the animatronic's mouth, my brain automatically goes to, man, I'm really interested to know how he's harnessed in to that mouth. Like it immediately takes me out of the movie, and I'm thinking about how it's made instead of like what's actually happening on film, you know?
Well, we're always thinking of that, but I think because there's a danger for the actor, there's a level of skill that has to be like done rather than like a bunch of people sitting in a server farm like spinning GPUs. There's like a level of like actual danger. Not that people have to put themselves in danger, but
that's true.
Level of like commitment to the thing, and like that's at least a dude being dragged out, and that's more than I can say for any movies that come out. That I think is cool.
The sequence also sets up the really fun, I think it's fun, gag with the satellite phone for the rest of the movie.
Incredible.
The jingle is so ominous, and it's so lighthearted, but like for the rest of the movie, you're like, oh fuck, where is it?
Yeah, no, that's one of the smarter things they did in the script, what they shot. Brian?
Oh no, yeah, that gag was one of the moments that I referenced without saying it in the non-spoiler section, but it's also one of the silliest moments in the movie because the dinosaur is literally standing there waiting for them to recognize it, and then it starts attacking them.
I've come from the brush.
And it's somehow
see me.
It's somehow less loud than the satellite phone volume. It sneaks up, but it just absolutely makes no sense.
So like,
but it's
in the first
great.
movie, we get like rippling effects in water to like, and you hear the thunderous footsteps, and this beast is larger than a Tyrannosaurus.
To be honest, this happens all the time in these fucking movies. When the Triceratops goes through the tent, it's like you would hear like
the earth would be shaking.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, you get this a lot. I think in the first Jurassic Park, there's a moment where the T-Rex comes out of nowhere and we didn't hear a sound cue, like just for the act of surprise. So I kind of call bullshit. This series fucks around with how loud the dinosaurs are at any given moment. He was just chilling there the whole time. He was just sitting there.
And, you know, if you look closely, he's wearing slippers. So, you know.
He just got out of bed.
But, like, to that point, and where this movie does feel more of that B-horror movie, more of the things that are like, oh shit, it just went to the next level, that the other films I think honestly don't do, is that when I think that moment's immediately followed by they make it through the gate, they look back, he's on the other side of the gate, you're like, okay, and then he just fucking crashes through the gate and you're like, oh fuck. Like,
that is a cool sequence.
It does, like, I don't know, the film constantly is showing you terror and being like, they're safe, and now they're not. And I think that's like a skillful thing to do in a more like horror oriented film.
I will say, despite the silliness of him standing there, that screenshot is probably my favorite look for the Spinosaurus over the course of the entire film.
Looks great.
Getting to see him hunched over like that and just standing there in the field, like getting to see the full body. I know it's an entirely CGI shot, which is disappointing, but just getting to see the full scale of what he looks like and kind of like how he stands is really interesting to me in terms of like monster design.
In the stillness is funny because the artist like kind of joke about it in the sense that like when they first did the previs renders and stuff, he was like running up, and Joe Johnston was like, no, I just want him fucking standing there, barely moving. And so they're like, he constantly wanted us to make him less moving less. Like he wanted him.
It costs less to do that.
No, it's actually harder. They were like, well, from like a conceptual standpoint, like how do you make a dinosaur stand still? Like there's actually a lot more nuance than running, because running there's motion blur and there's like all this stuff. To have a dinosaur just standing there slowly, like the subtlety of the breathing and his arms swaying, you know, that's actually more difficult artistically than making him run somewhere, because running, you're just like, okay, like this frame his legs here and this frame his legs all the way over here because he's running so fast that's how it's going to look. Whereas he's standing still. Okay, what changes in this frame that's going to make it look realistic? It's actually conspicuously and deceptively more difficult.
But because there's less motion, it does cost less in terms of like budget and rendering and finance.
No,
you don't think so?
Yeah, you still have to make every frame. You just have to make decisions about what's going to be different between each frame. Yeah, every frame is what costs budget. And actually, to like, when you have him running, you actually don't have to render his legs as quality because he's running. So his leg is from here to, I'm doing shit for video that we're not doing video for, but his leg is, let's say, 1 foot, and then his leg's 3 foot forward in one frame. The quality of that frame can be less because it's going by so fast that it's just going to naturally blur. So there's no point in adding a bunch of quality and detail into that render. Whereas if he's subtly moving, you have to like minutely go frame by frame and be like, okay, well, his chest expands this far and his arm goes a little bit to the right here. Like, I do think it's more difficult and notable that it is a standout like CG moment for you of like how cool it looks.
True.
Anyway, that's Christian's digression into visual effects, which I think look, honestly, CG hit or miss here. Not gonna lie, but it's mixed in, and because it's mixed in so much with some other stand-up moments that I might mention of like raptors coming into frame while animatronic heads are there. Like, I think that is always the way to do it. And I talked about in our weekly upload, which you should check out. I recently saw Top Gun Mavericks. There's a lot of CG. Like, everybody's talking about how they filmed it in real planes. There's a lot of CG in there, but it looks more convincing because it's next to so much real shit, and it's compared to that your eye just blends it all into one realistic thing. Whereas if it's all CG, your brain goes, that's video game. But yeah, okay. Brian, other standout moment.
So on the raptor progression, them setting the trap with the dead body, I think that was, it's kind of
yeah,
it's, they don't dive into it too deeply, and obviously we'll see how it goes at the next trilogy in terms of where they take it. But this idea of them using tools, planning this kind of thing, while it's not necessarily like animals, like you were saying earlier, it's something that was really effective and different from what we'd seen before.
Having the actor in the raptor legs actually step
in
on
the claw, dude.
Yep,
that
on
is
Michael Jeter, the claw coming
spine.
down and him screaming.
yes,
Very
one
good.
of the most terrifying images that stuck with me. And I
I
think
wonder how heavy that was to have on his back. I mean, I know there's a dude. They must have made like the legs that go around him probably lighter, but that's a great scene.
all I know is that the raptor claw coming down is one of my favorite, most chilling shots in this entire franchise.
Really
like,
good.
For
it's
sure.
terrifying. Like, oh,
You
like,
feel
you
that.
just cringe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this movie has a lot of that, to be perfectly honest, about it, like viscerally affecting you in a terrifying way. Yeah, great scene. I think that the whole lead up to that scene, you get this one beautiful shot of when they're walking around in the facility. You get a quick shot of a raptor like run by quietly, no sound, and it's just like, if you catch it, you're like, oh shit. And then that raptor head still. I think that sequence plays out really cool. I think it's awesome. Chris, stand-up moment.
My final standout moment, when I go into the Jurassic Park movies, based on what that first movie was able to do with the introduction, first seeing dinosaurs on screen, alive, moving for the first time. The Brachiosaurus in Jurassic Park 1, the Stegosaurus herd in Lost World. I'm always looking for the wow moment in a Jurassic Park movie, because typically each one of these movies has a moment of calm when our main human cast can marvel at the wonder of dinosaurs being on Earth again, instead of like being perpetually in this state of fear of being eaten by them, And I really do like that river raft sequence to a point. I think the CGI gets a little goofy at the tail end of the sequence when the Brachiosaur is kind of like leaning over the boat. But the moment when they're just sailing down the river and Dr. Grant and Eric are kind of just marveling in the wonder of seeing this huge herd of various dinosaurs just move along the riverbank. I get that same feeling I do in those previous two sequences that I mentioned. So I appreciate that despite its flaws, this movie's still able to deliver one of those moments where you're sitting there in the theater, and this is why we go to the movies, and you're just like, this is astonishing.
And it's
I can't
an
believe I'm seeing
interesting,
this.
unique place to put it, because you get the moment where they're flying over originally, and Dr. Grant's like, all right, this is why he brought me. But immediately the audience is like, something else is like, they're trying to get this kid. Like, you already know this because of the opening sequence and all that.
Right.
So that scene's very different. Whereas like this is like that they've all been monsters. They're just in peril. And there's this like spark of beauty that happens towards the end. But I appreciate the placement. I think it makes this film, again, unique among the rest of the series.
Yeah, usually, at least from what we saw from the first two films, it lulls you. The film lulls you into the terror. In this film, it's straight into the terror. And then in the third act, on the very opening of the third act, we're like, here's your moment of peace and wonder. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, what else is good? Alan, we didn't talk about that. There's a raptor that talks.
Alan.
Not a high point. Not a high point. It looks like it was shot in a day. Not the best scene. This film, I think, suffers from having some terrible fucking scenes. The first scene is a standout moment for... it's a huge low point in the entire movie, because they comped the blue screen parasailing into this like CG rope that looks terrible, and it's just kind of like so disengaging where you're like, oh god, what? This movie, to my point, I think it saves itself as it goes through, but it's such a not well thought out scene for what's supposed to set up the stakes for the movie. It's really sad, and I think one of the huge detriments to the film of a scene that conceptually sounds very Spielberg, conceptually goes through the smoke, comes out, and it's like, why isn't this working? It's actually not from like a writing standpoint. It's just a very classic horror set piece. It's like just pure execution not functioning well, and you being disjointed from... They shot part of to give you an idea, they shot part of the outside shots outside of Hawaii, shot part outside in California. The boat is CG sometimes, the boat isn't CG sometimes. When they're parasailing, it's there. Sometimes on this one you can't notice, but it's a hilarious detail. Them parasailing, the wide shots of them parasailing outside the islands, sometimes it's two dummies on...
I knew it wasn't them with how bad it looked when you actually saw their faces.
That being said, standout moment, visual effects, and here's the positive. When he rips the parachute cord, the parachute comes out, that parachute is CG, and you would have fooled me. And I'm like,
Okay.
And that was some like cutting edge fabric simulations they were using. I was like, yeah, that's good. That's the only good part of that.
Dinosaur, guys.
Yep,
Incredible.
there it is.
I wasn't going to say it up front, but
5 stars.
5-star movie.
So that stands out, as we've mentioned several times, as a particularly really rough shot. But I do one last shout out to the CG. I like the one of my favorite dinosaurs that you never see in any of these films, but we get some of in this, and ironically the Jurassic World movie. But the what's it called, the Ammosaurus, the one with the spiky back and the spiky tail.
The Ankylosaurus, yeah.
I think it looks great. It's a CG dinosaur.
It does.
Yeah, I think it looks wonderful. It looks really good. We got to talk before we wrap up. Tyrannosaurus Rex versus Spinosaurus. This is the first time in this series we get like full predator, giant predator, and predator. Like we've gone full Godzilla,
And
it's so much
T-Rex,
more.
The T-Rex in that sequence is CGI.
No, not for the first. When he opens up and he's eating, that's a refurbished old Jurassic.
But the fight, they had an animatronic Spinosaurus versus a CGI T-Rex.
In parts. When they're like, they
Right.
do like this cool circular pan shot. That's all CG. But then there's like you were mentioning, there's parts of the Spinosaurus. But we do get the T-Rex when he first shows up, animatronic, which is super cool. But you don't like this fight?
He'll snap your
It's okay.
Spinosaurus. This was the first dinosaurs just snapping necks. It's like, wow, okay, that's how we're doing it. I think
Does the Spinosaurus even eat the T-Rex?
Oh no, it's just
Do we
pure
see-
battle. He'll just leave him. He's not even hungry.
See, that's part of the silliness that Brian and I are talking about. You know, like, and it's part of the silliness that bleeds. Hold on,
because he stops
also-
chasing them at that point.
maybe he does eat it. Maybe it's off screen,
Okay,
but like,
maybe he does.
and if that's the case, great. But this is part of the silliness that bleeds into Jurassic World in terms of dinosaurs just like killing for the sport of it. That's not an animalistic mindset for the most part. Some animals do that, but like they're few and far between.
So
We'll
I will
have to
say,
get into it because
on
they
that
they
note,
kind of justify it in Jurassic World. But
in this movie, Alan has a theory that raptors would have been the dominant species had they had time to develop, and I guess it's implied they have a form of language and stuff. So
Right.
they're supposed to be highly intelligent. So comparing them to, I mean, he says smarter than primates at some point, right? So it's like, I think it's not. It's
humans
pretty
come
much
for sport and to show dominance and to
exactly,
clear.
exactly.
Yeah.
So if he's saying they would have been like humans had the catastrophe not happened that killed the dinosaurs,
I can,
think it tracks.
what the silly thing is, I can buy it for the raptors. I cannot buy it for this hulking animal like
Well,
a Spinosaurus.
yeah, right.
There's really no reason that he's following them across the island. The raptors, yes, they justify it in the story. Spinosaurus, no. The scene you're pointing out, I don't have a problem with because he literally stopped. Like, I think they implied that the Spinosaurus eats T-Rex. He runs into a larger predator. He's going to have to defend himself. And then literally the chase scene with the Spinosaurus ends. Because remember, the snap of the neck is synced with the punch to William H. Macy of like, why the fuck did we land,
Oh,
So-
Which is a great transition.
Yeah,
I
it
will
is.
say.
It is.
No, it is. I actually really I pointed out the scene because I think as far as CG monster battles go, I think choreographed well. It's not super long. It's pretty quick, and I think it's an interesting way to show. Oh, now you're dealing with a Spinosaurus.
Yeah, it's
You gotta
setting
show
the
that,
new
you know?
stakes. Yeah, it's like showing like, oh, you thought the T-Rex was the big bad. No, we're going bigger.
Yeah. So
Which was their intention.
Yeah.
Joe Johnston has talked about that in behind the scenes stuff.
and I think from a choreographed standpoint, I appreciate how they executed it more than so much dinosaur action we get come the next film. And I specifically watched our next film way ahead of schedule just to go like, am I crazy? Am I crazy? Is this movie really better? Because it's not a great movie, but I like it. And I think we'll talk more about it next week. But yeah, I think this holds up way better. Oh boy, I'm gonna poop. I'm gonna poop all over that movie. I don't think you know.
Jurassic
This is
World.
fine. This is a fun B horror movie. There's no denying.
It is. I gotta say,
Not boring.
I'm excited to talk about themes of Jurassic World because I think thematically it is trying to do more than this movie's trying to do, and it's a very meta commentary on like the state of the franchise, as well as like the state of theme parks and how we like absorb entertainment.
I'm saving my thoughts for next week because I have
But
so much to say. It's like making your movie about like you saw Goomta. What's the pig's name?
Gunda.
Gunda, right? Which is a movie about like animals have feelings and are sentient beings and we should care about them. And it's like the first part of Gunda being like, God, you love animals, they're so good. And the back half of that becoming a film about like why an all meat diet is the way to live and you should be a carnivore and only eat meat. Like we'll get into it, but it's like, yeah, sure. Thematically, it had some ideas that were grander, but then it totally doesn't give a shit about making a point about it. It just becomes the thing that it's making fun. Anyway, yes, spoiling my.
But I think, oh God,
I
think it intentionally becomes the thing.
Oh, fuck you.
We'll have.
We're gonna go back
cage
into a
match
RoboCop
next
conversation
week.
in
Yeah.
terms of intent
God, the fact that
and if art is functioning correctly.
the fact that you would describe, and I know it for a fact, you'd be like Jurassic World is better than RoboCop. You're a fool. You're a fool, and I pity you. Jurassic World is we talked about the declining thing. We'll talk about Jurassic World. It is the worst movie in this series. I haven't even rewatched Dominion, and I can say it matter of factly.
Fallen Kingdom, you mean?
God, I keep confusing. Fallen Kingdom, it should be the last one, right?
No, it's a fallen kingdom because the dinosaurs have been released into the real world, into the human world.
There's a third act moment in Fallen Kingdom that happens in the first
Now
act.
we're just talking about all the movies.
All right, let's wrap up. Any final thoughts on Jurassic Park 3? That's spoiling your thoughts for next week's episodes.
My final thoughts for Jurassic Park 3 is basically the same that I said at the top of the episode. This movie I've seen multiple times over the course of my life. Despite all of its flaws, it's still incredibly entertaining, and I think a worthy rewatch. I think all three of these first three Jurassic Park films are a ton of fun. Some are functioning way better than others, but Jurassic Park 3 is still very much a worthy addition to this franchise.
Yeah, this movie feels kind of like Scream 3 to me at this point. I kind of had a revelation while we were talking about it, in that it's very aware of what the franchise has done before, and it's kind of just going where it logically makes sense to go, but also kind of taking the piss out of the previous stuff a little bit, but in a kind of fun way at times. Like, I laughed a decent amount during this movie, and I think the ending, like it working to the ending that it does with the kid watching Barney while talking on the phone to Alan, it's just like, this is hilarious and awesome, and it's when the dinosaur looks my favorite of any in the entire movie. So I think ultimately, like you said, Chris, worthwhile watch, and had its moments.
For sure. I like this movie. I think I enjoyed this more than the second one, as I said, just because it was shorter. And it was interesting. I think it's the one I remember the least, so I think it has that charm to it of being like, oh, I forgot how cool this was. And there's a lot of cool set pieces. I think they're all worthy. And I love again, I'm going to mention it, raptors with quills. I like quills on my raptor. I know Chris, you
Colors
disagree.
on them were really cool too in the close-up shots.
Yeah, because
I dislike the colors.
The idea,
I feel like they're
though,
unnatural.
No, the idea is that they're like the male dominant would be it's like the idea of a peacock. Like,
I understand.
Yeah, so they'd be the male dominant would be more colorful, and I like that. I like that they're not just gray lizards.
And again, I don't know why this bothers me so much, but I think I would have enjoyed the design of the raptors more if the film was set on Isla Nublar. Like the raptors look so, and it comes down to an environmental thing and like a monster design choice, and like the raptors look so drastically different from the raptors in the Lost World. Like there's no way.
Well, they were on the other side of the island, and those
there's
are all
no way
female
that
raptors.
amount of distance would have led to that strong of a color variation. I'm not a biologist, and I don't study any of that shit.
It
but
could be argued that because the female raptor looks the same.
Does it?
Yeah, the
The
female
raptors in Lost World are still like brown.
Yeah, no, the female raptors look like the raptors from Lost World. It's
I'll have to look
It's
again.
the couple of male raptors that we see that are.
At the end of the day, my nerdy nitpicking means absolutely nothing in terms
Which could
of
make
the
sense.
quality of this movie.
Remember that
It's my own personal problem.
well, I'll nerd you right back with some thoughts I have on the fly, which is that all the dinosaurs originally from the original would have been all females. So the dinosaurs that we saw in Lost World were most likely the mature females that were still alive from the first batch, and these ones that we're seeing are much younger males that are birthed from them reproducing with the frog shit.
Is it stated in this movie that the raptor with the quills is a male?
I don't think it's stated, but it was mentioned on the visual production, which was
They said that their intent was that one was male.
The male raptors would be colorful like peacocks because Joe Johnston wanted to kind of reinvent the raptor a little bit and add some visual distinction between what we've previously seen. And I
wonder if that's the only time in the entire franchise that they've ever referred to one of these dinosaurs as male.
Yes, because Blue and Delta and all
female.
all our favorite raptors from
The main characters of the franchise, right?
pretty much. I mean,
It's gross. We'll talk about it.
Owen's a nothing burger of a character. I can't wait to talk about it. It's so dumb. He sucks. I like Chris Pratt, and I think he's doing the best he can. I can't wait to talk about Jurassic World.
But Jurassic Park 3, fun ride.
Fun ride. Jump on it. It feels, I used to ride the ride at Universal. It feels like that ride. It feels like it's got the same vibe.
They made that ride like very close to when this movie came out. Yeah.
Very cool. Catch it. What did you think of Jurassic Park 3? You should email us at pop-oholicscast@gmail.com. That link is in the show notes, as well to all of our social media where you can follow us, check us out, let us know what you want us to cover. What do you think about Jurassic Park? All of them. Do you like Jurassic World? It's okay. I'm not going to be mad at you. I get it. You're probably 8 years old. Gentlemen, where can people find more? No, you're not. It's not. I'm assuming that you're 8 years old. You're just more likely that you're like 8 or 12 years old. Gentlemen, where can people find more of your work on the internet?
Fellow Pop-O-Holics, you can find me on Twitter at Chris Conkling, talking about all things nerdy.
You can find me on Twitter at True Pop-O-Holic.
And you can find my band at Midnight Satire, augmented reality EP streaming now. Check it out. It's not quite the ride that Jurassic Park 3 is, but it does have more themes, to Chris's point. And, if you follow me on Twitter, you can see me dunking on 8 and 12-year-olds. Listen, I'm jealous of your youth. So that's going to do it for this show. Next
week...
Your
son is going to like Jurassic World when he sees it.
Don't you fucking dare.
I'm just going to say
Don't you dare. We're talking about Jurassic World next week. And all Jurassic Park, all Jurassic June. Check us on our weekly uploads. All of that and more coming up on...